Welcome to Hard Questions. That's where we gather pastors together to take on your tough questions and answer them right from the Bible. I'm Tom Hollis, the moderator, and today our panelists include
Dr. William R. Glaze, Bethany Baptist Church in Pittsburgh.
Ray Heupel, pastor of Providence Presbyterian Church in Robinson Township.
Pete Giacalone, Rainbow Temple Assembly of God Church, McKeesport, Pennsylvania.
J. Anthony Gilbert, Another Level Ministries in Mount Washington.
Pastors, thank you for joining us on the program today. So here's our question. Is it okay for Christians to be on meds for depression or anxiety, or should they simply cast all their care on Him?
Well, I'll jump into this, and I'll share a personal story that I had a guy that I was dealing with, and he was dealing with depression. And he was reading this book, and I'm not going to say who the pastor is, because if I said that, everybody here would know who I'm saying. But he had this book, and he said, this is what this guy says in here. He says, I don't need any medication, you know, and he was depressed.
I know who that is.
Okay, so he said that in the midst of me going to his house, having to make his wife feel safe in the home because he stopped taking his medicine, and he was threatening her. He said that in the midst of me talking to him and him nodding out every 5 minutes and coming back, you know, he said that in the midst of, you know, going on these highs where he just was out in the community running around. So, you know, I would say that, you know, if you have been prescribed medication for a specific reason, then you need to probably be taking it.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think you, like anything else, you know, get a second opinion. You know, there's a lot of, I think there is, especially in this area, people that are maybe too quick to do medicine, especially for kids. You know, a lot of times they're trying to put boys who are just active boys on Ritalin and stuff. When I was a younger man, I know some people that they said that about, and there was nothing wrong with these kids except they were active boys. So you definitely want to have someone who's a solid doctor, get a second opinion, maybe a third opinion, but there really is mental illness. I mean, it's a real thing. People can use it to get out of sin, and so you want to keep those issues separate. What I always tell people, they come into my office, they say they're on something. I say, look, you work that out with your psychiatrist, your doctor. We're going to talk about your responsibility before God, because that doesn't change, you know, simply because you're on this medicine. You're still required to obey. You're still required to repent and believe. Maybe in a more limited sense, because you're incapacitated at a certain level. But, you know, I try to separate them. We look at the spiritual, and then you deal with the mental, you know, the health issues with your physician.
Yeah, I agree, especially with what certain medications that people are on today, especially those who are dealing with bipolarism. Oh my gosh, if they come off on their own, I've seen it happen. People in the church, it was disastrous. I know one particular individual, and I agree with you, Ray, about getting that second opinion. That is so important. Someone very, very dear to me and Elaine, very dear, for close to 35 years, was told that she had bipolar. It was a female. And then recently a specialist said, you've never had it. You've been on, and now they got to get her off all these medications. And she didn't have it to begin with. So always get that second opinion, but don't, please, if you ever hear a preacher say throw your medications away, please use your head.
Yeah, without a doubt. I have a story of a woman that actually, back in New York when I was pastoring out there, that actually committed suicide because she came off her meds. She had actually driven to a bridge and caused an accident. She went to jump off of the bridge. The guy tried to pull her back. She punched the guy, jumped over, broke both of her legs, and crawled into a river. This is a woman that was a successful businesswoman because she had a chemical imbalance. I've done counseling in the mental health field and addiction field for many years, and 75% of all people dealing with depression and anxiety can eventually come off of meds if they learn psychotherapy. So that there's a way of thinking, because even though some of it only requires medication in order to get their balances back to where they need to be, but many people just have what you would call stinking thinking, which we all can fall into at times. So we need to have both. We need to have, sometimes people need the medication, but they also need to have the counseling to change the way that they think because of the imbalances. They've trained their ways of thinking. So,
well, see, we would never tell anybody, you know, don't take your pain medication for your back or your heart.
Or
don't
blood
take
pressure.
But with this, we say, well, wait a minute, this isn't a behavior. Well, we should be able to behave properly because we're Christians. But to the whole point of depression, when I was in charge of the prayer line here, it seemed like half the calls mentioned depression, or a lot of the calls mentioned depression. And the question is, and most of them are Christians, why is depression such a huge problem? I know this is a whole other question that we don't have time for, but just real quickly, what are your thoughts?
Well, you know, I was talking to a guidance counselor, middle school, and a very close friend, good friend, an upper middle class area, and I asked him in the Pittsburgh area, he goes, Pastor, the number one thing I'm dealing with middle school kids, anxiety. Anxiety. So great.
I mean, I would look at the life of the person. You know, everybody's a little bit different, and sometimes you may have reasons why you're depressed. You know, if you're not being a productive member of society, you're not working. God created us to work. You're not doing something that you can feel good about. Then there's a reason behind that. So I'm not going to right away jump to the medical. I'm going to look at the person's life. You know, are they walking right before the Lord? And then if that's the case, you know, okay, well, maybe there is something that you need to see a health professional on, and maybe it is a real condition, because there is a real condition.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're sinners, and we can abuse that to try to get out of our responsibility. And you want to always try to help people say, look, you can't do that, because God's not going to bless that.
And that's why they have to have a psychologist or a psychiatrist that comes in there and diagnose them, because is it chemical?
That's right.
Or is it just a way, or they call it situational anxiety or situational depression? It means certain things have happened, and as a result, this is why I'm
we
picking it.
understand that.
Yeah.
The chronic thing is what's hard for us to understand, that it's where someone is constantly.
But it can become chronic. If they don't come out of it, change their thinking, they can stay in that mode for a long period of time.
That's good, Pastor Jay. That's really good. Well, please send us your hard questions at hardquestions@ctvn.org. You can also call to the prayer line, get some prayer, and also give us your hard questions at 888-665-4483. Pastors, thank you so much for dealing with a very difficult question. Thank you.